up, my man?
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? I'm
It's good
trying
to
out
see.
my.
Uh,
Thank you.
how many
Thank you.
buttons I had to
Beautiful.
just click? I was like so behind, first of all. Well, I wasn't that behind, but I had underestimated the amount of time it's going to take me with 2 minutes before 1:30 to work on this new desktop that I'm trying to work on right now. So makes it tough. And I'm not even connected to my headphones, so we'll just take that off.
There you go.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Thanks, man. I'm good. I just took we're taking care of a dog. Took the dog for a walk, and then I walked all the way to the
Nice.
store to return something for Amazon. Getting my steps in there, so it's been working. It's been working good. It's been working good.
Excellent. Have you found it to be challenging at all, or has it been an interference at all for you to get your steps in throughout the day? I'm always I'm always curious about the guys who aren't necessarily stay at home, like myself, and have jobs as 9 to 5s, and how they're not coping but dealing with getting in steps, and whether it's getting up early in the morning or after work, or and does that replace their workout now because they're trying to get that time to spend in putting in steps. So I'm really kind of curious to start getting feedback as we get into this next week, into the second and third weeks, because I think everybody's going to live, this with just fitness in general. People kind of live off of a high. And so it's just like, the beginning of the new year, everybody gets really excited about their goals and getting in their steps and staying consistent. And then obviously the reality sets in of life and work and kids and just natural stressors. So I'm curious how everybody else is dealing with it, because honestly, this is helping me deal with everything else. And this has been a really kind of a nice time to either get up earlier than I've wanted to, even though I'm up at 5, I now get up at 4:30, and I appreciate that half hour even more so in the morning, walking around the neighborhood, listening to music. Or last night, I decided to take my daughter for a walk around the neighborhood in her stroller. And she's a little bit too big for her stroller, and she wants to ride her bike, but I wanted to get some steps in, and it was a great way to calm her down and to get her kind of ready and associated for bed. So, yeah, I'll stop talking, but I'm really curious about how everybody else is dealing and whether they find any difficulties in it. So I'll let you answer.
Yeah, for sure. I love, I think, talking about the state of everything with the step challenge, because I think that the energy around it has been so positive. And so I always want to make sure that everyone feels as if it's definitely affecting them positively. And so my biggest concern, is that the way I want to take this? Oh my God, hold on, we're dog sitting this crazy stuff.
You're good.
So I think I'm curious about this, because it was something that I talked about when I was away, and I was wishing, my biggest wish was that people watched their burnout and they didn't overstretch themselves, because I think that the people can ride that wave and ride that energy and get really excited. And I think what I wanted people to think about were 3 things. Was like, what is the amount of steps that is just going to be considered like your absolute minimum? Like, what do you know that you're going to do in a day that if you're below that, that it's almost like you didn't even try, right? So
Right.
because I think that's a better number for some people to make sure that they fall back on first and foremost before they start to think that they can hit those high numbers, because people can burn out so easily. And I think that's where the self-doubt comes in. I think the shame starts to come in. So like when there's doubt and shame and all that kind of stuff, like that's really where we start to have issues. So where do you definitely know that you can, like what is that absolute minimum that you are going to be able to hit? What is going to be that next stage where I think people can make sure that they're pushing themselves, right, without overdoing it, right? Where do you think it's going to feel good? Like, what is it that you're going to, like, at the end of the day, you feel as if, you know what, I did what I could. I'm good sitting back right now, getting my sleep and whatever else. And then what is that absolute max? Where do you hit and you're like, wow, I really pushed myself? Because I think if we don't have those set and we don't have a range of steps, that's where I think a lot of people can fall into trouble. because we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to understand where we were. Because I always like to talk to people about, and tell me that you end up talking about this too. I like to talk about, what mode are you in right now? When I kind of talk to people like that day, are you in survival mode? Are you in maintenance mode? Are you in push mode? And so for a lot of people, when you're talking about, Bri, you mentioned people that are not working at home. So, I always say that if somebody, has a lot of time to devote to something, their stress is low and their happiness is high, you're in push mode, right? You're in push mode. Like, you can take on anything. You can probably take on more. But on the other end, like survival mode, if you're going to be sitting somewhere where you don't have a lot of extra time, stress is really high, happiness is really, really limited, that tells me like you're in survival mode. It's time to make sure that you understand where you fit within your range of calories, of food, of movement, of, even social engagement. So, that's my wish, is that people don't burn themselves out when they end up doing it. And it's hard to see people taking a bunch of steps like you or Robbie or, Dom right now is killing it. And it's like, don't keep measuring yourself up to that. Just make sure that you definitely know it's just, let's just make sure we're doing a little more than we were before. I think most of us are stronger and more capable than we actually think. But it's like, okay, like, let's make sure that we, keep ourselves safe and all that,
I think you bring up a great point. Is just keeping it realistic within our own standards, right? And not necessarily comparing against somebody else. I heard a great story. I'm going to probably butcher the story and maybe make up little bits and pieces, but I'll get the picture across. And there was a young girl in high school, and she went out, and she might have even been younger, whatever. She's a young kid. She's going out. She wanted to run track. So she ran track. She's at her first meet, and she goes ahead. They sprint around the whole track, and she comes in last place. And she comes off the field, and she's devastated. Her head's down. And she goes over, and her grandpa's like, let's go. Like, congratulations. That's the greatest thing ever. She's like, Grandpa, what are you talking about? I got I got last place. What are you saying? He goes, yeah, but I had you down for over a minute and you got 54 seconds. And that's huge, right? And he's like, that's amazing. He goes, that's a PR. And she's like, what's a PR? He goes, that's a personal record. It's your first time you've ever run this. You've never ran it before. 56 seconds. This is huge. So right there and then, the girl had a standard of herself, what her not limitations are, but what her reality was. Her reality didn't need to compare to the other girls and put herself behind or limit herself mentally or whatnot. It was a flip of the switch of, hey, I'm accomplishing something, and this is just my reality, and they're on their own journey. And so now this next time this kid goes into a race, what's her standard of winning? It has nothing to do with what place she gets into or how she does, like in terms of first, second, or third. All she's thinking about is, I need to go beat 54 or 56 seconds or whatever it was. And if she does, she's a winner and she's improving, right? And so I like to think of that story when it comes to us as, and I've talked about it before, we're all on our own journey. We're all on our own chapters of our own book of a fitness, adventure. So don't get wrapped up in what other people are doing. Like you say, if your standard, and I look back on this too, my standard for just movement throughout the day was like 4,000 steps, whether that was I had my phone on me or I didn't have my phone on me, and I now consciously have my phone on me more, I'm walking more. That's the standard, right? So knowing what your numbers are. So if I sit around and I look at my phone at the end of the day, I see 5,000 steps. I can't knock myself too much because my average really was about 4,000. And it's better than the average, right? It might not be the 15 that I've been doing the last couple of days, and I might not have that time allowed for that day or that opportunity. But again, we're all on our own journey. So I don't want people to get wrapped up in like, oh my gosh, she's doing this or they're doing that. Great. Well, what did you do yesterday? What did you do today? And what are you planning on wanting to do tomorrow? And kind of go with that. So.
And, I kind of feel like the goals have been a little bit arbitrary in a way. It's like there was the, point system. I don't know how closely we're kind of sticking to that, but I think most people, it's just, people trying to do definitely more than they have been. So I think that's huge. So hopefully we can keep pushing everyone to not burn out and keep going. And, even Robbie was talking about getting a walking podcast, walking stream going. So that would be really fun too, to have that be a thing. So
That
we'll
would
see what
be cool. I've actually thought that would happen during like the VDads in the morning where everybody's just kind of walking around. But
it's, you know what, it definitely is it's a weird time. I feel like Dom is getting up a little bit earlier. Dom, give me a thumbs up if that's the truth. Dom's getting up a little bit earlier, getting his steps in. I think that's what's happening, or he's doing some work early and he's walking after Daily Dads. But he's been walking a bunch lately, a lot more than he has on the beach. Again, give me a thumbs up, Dom. I don't want to answer for you because he's in the chat right now. But he's been doing that. For me, I've done the bulk of my morning walk at that time, and I got my workout in, and then it's like just after we got the girls off to school. So it's hard to walk, and then Blaze is usually in the car. So it's always like, it would be great, but it's always kind of a weird time. But yeah, no, I think if we definitely have the chance to do it, I think that we definitely should. And I think Dom is saying 4 a.m. every day since the challenge. 4 a.m. Dom, that's pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
So I'm usually up at 4:40 and then I'm out. But if I miss that, there's like a window. If I miss, I gotta stay at home. But hey, you know what? Let me just reset this for a second. For anyone that's just tuning in over here, I know I connected this over to my Instagram, also to my Food is Fuel NYC business account over on Facebook. I think we're connected to VDads, or at least my Daily Dads on X, my profile on X. It's everywhere right now. But if you're checking this out, we're Health Dads right now, talking about all things health, movement, training. And, you know, a big part of the mission of, you know, I think VDads is making sure that I can't tell why this dog, what this dog is doing.
That was a dog.
Yeah. But overall, it's just confidence in health, mindset, and connection with yourself and your kids and your family and all that kind of stuff too. So me and Bri have been, we were together, I think more like 2 weeks ago, and then I was away. So it's hard to kind of keep that. I've been doing some Health Dad streams in the morning, but overall kind of talking about whatever a salient topic is for the moment. I think bringing it up and making sure that we aren't leaving the health conversation to just kind of sit around, because I think it's good just to kind of bring these things up. So that's where we're at. And please, if anything is something that you feel like is resonating with you, please just give a share, give a follow, so that we know that we can either help you guys out too, because hey, we're not getting paid to do this. We just want to make sure that we can show up. So that's where we're at. So I was, with that said, I was thinking about like structure, like when we talk, what do we do? I thought one thing that was interesting, and it's good for me because selfishly, I'm like, how can we become better dads and practitioners and, you know, trainers, nutritionists, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, what is the state of our current clients? Have you ever, what's that called? Oh my gosh, what is it in psychology? I mean, it's in like healthcare too, but people do, it's not shadowing. That's not what it is, but I'll think of it. They basically talk about all of their current situations with like clients and see what's going on. So like kind of the state of our clients and, you know, any questions that have like really come up or challenges or anything like that. But I thought that would be an awesome thing to kind of touch on and see like,
absolutely,
where are we at? What are we hearing from clients right now?
Yeah. You know what? It's amazing that you bring this up right now. I actually touched on this a little bit this morning in my morning coffee session, and I've been hearing a lot of the same kind of chatter within like the community, right? And that's guys our age or parents, usually married or single parents and having kids and having a job and trying just to figure out how they can continue in their chaotic lives. For me, it kind of goes back to if it's important to you enough, you'll make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if you really want to get it done, it'll happen. So I always like to try to figure out what's the limiting factor? Why haven't we done this in the past? Like what's holding you back from moving now? So I'm always, the common theme that I'm hearing now is I want more energy. I want to feel good. I want to look good, but not necessarily look like big and bulky and massive,
Mhm.
especially the guys. Not a lot of them are like, hey, I don't want to put on a ton of size. They may want to increase muscle mass or change their body composition a bit, and that's a different story, but they're not trying to get massive, which is fine. We're getting a little bit older. We're losing muscle mass a little bit. Essentially, it's harder to put on more muscle mass, but we want to be able to have more energy and we want to feel good. So my question is what's stopping you? What's stopping us? Right. And I say us because I want to include myself into these conversations. And you know what? I sent you a text message just yesterday saying, hey, why don't we come up with something crazy where we challenge each other? We haven't discussed it yet. We haven't talked about it yet, but I threw this out there of like, hey, why not try to do something where I train you and me and you tell you and me what to eat and we hold each other accountable? Because at the end of the day, accountability is so big. It's one thing to be able to do this by yourself, but to have somebody else and it takes you outside of your comfort zone and do it in a place that we're trying to build. Like we sit here on every other live stream and talk about any and everything that's going on in our life and how we can fix it. But we seem to miss that element of movement, right? We're still trying to figure out how do we bring this fitness? Like, guys, I just know for me and my personal experience that when I have shit going on in my life and I can't think and I'm depressed and I'm discouraged or my ADD or OCD is just like chaotic and noises and I feel overwhelmed and I don't know what to do, I go move.
Yeah.
And I guarantee that's just me personally, 30, 45 minutes after movement, I feel like a different person, whether
Yeah.
it's the endorphins or whether it's just, I think you put up something where it talked about the brain starts doing something that's like contracting, or I forget exactly what it was, but there's so many things that go on inside of our body that just give us that feel good. And I'm just curious, what's the fear behind it? What's the fear of trying something new when something you've tried hasn't worked? Or why do we expect things to change without making changes to ourselves? Again, guilty. I'm throwing myself into this conversation.
Yeah. I think I love that. You know, I think it always comes down sometimes I'm always thinking like, what is it that I'm, overall selling, or what is it that someone's going to come to me for and then want to,
Mm-hmm.
invest money in working with me. And it always comes back to one thing, because I'm very open with this. It's like, there's nothing I'm going to tell you that's not already out there. There's
Yep.
nothing that I'm going to tell you that you're not going to Google. There's nothing I'm going to tell you that you can't just go into Chat GPT and, plug in right now. It's all out there. Now, whether you find the right things or the wrong things, I think the biggest challenge is kind of knowing how it's going to work for you, but it's overall confidence, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
confidence is what we really have to get to. But this is really what I find, right? If somebody is looking to be confident, we know everybody wants to be confident in their health and what they're doing and then what they're going to look like in the future. And I think a lot of people are like, well, I've done something like this before and it hasn't stuck, or, I don't know if this is exactly right for me. And those are all the things. The one thing that I find most with people, and you just said this before, is the idea of, changing or not changing, basically. I think most people have an identity issue. Identity, I'm not going to call it a crisis. It's an identity challenge. Because I see this a lot, like a lot of my people who want to change body composition, or a lot of people that are my binge eaters, is that once we define ourselves as a binge eater, we will always go back to what we feel comfortable with and what we know and how we define ourselves. So if you define
Yep.
yourself as a binge eater in a moment where you have less emotional availability, or your executive functioning is going to be a little bit low, you're going to go back to what you know and what you feel comfortable with. And so it's always going to be about how you define yourself. So if you want to define yourself as someone who is not kind, someone who is tired, that always is just going to lay down instead of anything else, or someone that is going to lose their cool, like, you're going to accept those things as someone who's not kind, someone who's lazy, or someone that, I don't understand what this dog needs. Because because she's like so skittish too. So I don't know what to do. But the identity is a big thing. So if somebody really wants to identify as someone who's not a binge eater, well, you need to identify yourself as someone who doesn't do binge eating habits, or you don't follow binge eating habits when things get really hard. So I always want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to re-identify with who we are. We are someone who gets up at 4 a.m. and walks because I feel good doing it, because it's led to some sort of outcome that I've really enjoyed, right? So we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to give someone that new identity, and you are going to have to change in a way. This is my biggest thing, Brian. And I always say this to my wife, because some things have come up, especially as we evolve, right? We just hit our 10-year anniversary, but the idea where, you know, people are going to change, people evolve. And so I think when it comes down to someone saying, well, I'm the same person, I don't understand why you might have a problem with me. Well, the problem is that, yes, we all evolve. We're going to change. We are not the same person we were without kids that we are with kids. We're not the same person when working from home before when we were working in an office. We're going to change. We have to accept that.
Constantly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we have to change our goals. We have to change our identity. But if we hold on to ourselves being a single person with no children when we're married with kids, well, then there's an identity issue, right? The same thing as someone who doesn't want to be a binge eater, but is someone who used to binge eat all the time. You have to re-identify yourself, and you have to help someone figure out, like, is this right for them? And that's where the confidence, I think, really starts to come in. So that's my take on this.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, we gotta want it. I'm gonna try to change this light back here. Sorry. I feel like it's.
I think my lights are off a little bit too.
I just looked up and I looked like I was a white ghost. Oh, there we go. I actually have some color now. There we go. A little bit.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, that's like, I think that's the biggest thing too. A couple other things I think are, what was I talking with someone about? This is just New York. You just get horns all the time. Anything else? I think the biggest things are, I don't know, I think most of my clients are kind of controlled at the moment. They feel pretty good. I think food shopping, you know what it is? I get a little bit frustrated with this. I never want to show my frustration, but I think it's always someone that's looking for the next thing. What's the next snack that I can have? What's that next, like, high protein thing that is, like, we haven't talked about yet? And I think sometimes
round beef.
I feel myself getting a little bit like, why do we need something new? Like, I get variety, and there's such a big benefit in having variety, but I think I feel myself like, but what you're doing is working right now. But if you're saying that you're bored, or you're saying that you can't stay consistent, then that's a problem. Let's talk about that, right? But it's like someone's, okay, what's that next thing? What's that next recipe? What's that next, like, I'm like, okay, well, here's something new, here's that. But then all of a sudden it's like, I feel like people are kind of bouncing back and forth. I think we want ideas. We want a little bit of novelty. I get that. But I think sometimes it's like, I think people get very uncomfortable with the idea of kind of sitting in, like, being patient. And I think just kind of sitting with the current status that's working. And then, you know, I think within that, there's so much work that can still be done. But if someone's like, okay, well, you know what, I've just lost a little bit of body fat, or I just hit a new PR. What's the next thing? Well, the next thing is to see what the same system or the same thing you just did, what it can bring you to, and how we can keep you consistent with that. So, you know, it's like, I always struggle with what you want, but you know, can we stick with something that definitely works? It's kind of a message I've been definitely giving a lot.
Yeah, I think part of it is a little bit of identity issue, like you brought up before. I think part of it is a cultural issue. Like, we just need, like, flashy, more stuff. Like, what's the next dopamine? Constant, like, there's somebody out there who's doing something bigger or better. What's that magic pill? What's that this? What's that? Yeah, it's called consistency, right? It's called eating the basics. Yeah, I've run into that quite often too. People just like, again, what's the supplement I need to be taking? Well, you're not working out right now, so, you know, like, let's talk about that. Why do you want to take supplements? Well, I want to get better results. Well, you're not doing anything, so let's start moving first, and then start figuring out what foods you're eating. And again, I go back to, I go back to, there's something in here that's blocking people. It is a fear. It's the fear of getting uncomfortable. It's a fear of failure. It's the fear of having other people see them. It's a fear of recognizing self-identity or what you're really capable of doing. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. It's just nobody likes to be held accountable. It's not really fun. It makes us grow. But if we were to sit there and lay out somebody's, weaknesses in front of everybody else, it's difficult. And I think that happens within fitness, and people are, well, I can't do that, or I can't do that like them, or they get discouraged. And that's why I think we're looking for quick outs or quick escapes. Not understanding the reality of where we're currently at, B, understanding maybe what our goals are and whether they're realistic or not, and how much effort is needed between those two gaps. What have you done in the past? I joke around, like people are like, well, look at you. I go, well, shit, man, it took me 40 years to work on this body. 40 years.
Yeah.
Whether sports and this and training, you know what, if I want it to change, it's going to take some time, right? For the person that walks in who's overweight, it took you however many years to get into this position. It's going to take some time to get out of it. However, we can do it. It just takes a little bit of action. Find out, again, what your base is, what you're currently doing, what's a realistic ballpark for you, and just continue to push, motivate. So I even said it this morning, I get encouraged, I get motivated by seeing people posting at 4,000 steps, 5,000 steps, people coming out and saying, you know what, guys, I wasn't able to do it and I feel like I failed, but tomorrow I'm going to do better, because it's the idea that's in their head now. It's the idea of people moving. It has gotten people moving. This challenge is exciting because it is going to be radical change for somebody out there, whether it's you or me or somebody that we don't know. It's going to be a radical change for them because they've gone from nothing and they're doing something, and that something is going to lead into something bigger. And that something bigger is going to just bleed out positivity and contagious positivity towards themselves and the people around them. So I'm excited to continue to do it. Whether it's waking up early like Dom and trucking around the neighborhood, or going to go get groceries now and walking there instead of driving. So be it. It's making us better. It's challenging ourselves. It's holding us accountable. And for wrong, right, or indifferent, we're all becoming better for it.
I hear you, man. I think everyone is going to be feeling good after it. All right, let's, next thing. Tell me how you feel about this.
Yeah.
BroFit's movement of the day. BroFit. What do we need to be doing with our body? What is a movement that we definitely should be doing with our body right now? Whether we're in the office, whether we're at home, what's something we need?
Oh, funny you ask. I'm doing it currently right now. Guys, if you sit down, which I assume a lot of us do, I'll just break it down. I'll give my dumbed down kid version of it because I like talking like I'm talking to some kid because it's easier to explain. What's fun is we like to work out. We go do our things. We work out our legs. We go do a bunch of running, right? We've got this fun ligament right here. It's off the side of my hip to the front of my knee. And what happens is after I've worked out, I've gone and I go sit down. Okay. It's kind of hard to see, but there's some slack in the rope right now. And when I sit down throughout the day and my muscles start to repair and recover, they tighten up, right? They're trying to there's some torn fibers and they're trying to rebuild and repair. So now they get really tight. And when I stand up, oh, it's tight. So now I'm shorted here and I start to walk around all funny and I get this like back pain and sometimes it's knee pain and we just can't figure out what's going on, right? So sitting, we're not made to sit. I challenge you guys to squat instead of sitting, but here's what I would do. Go find a wall, go find a chair, go find a couch. Okay, I'll show you a few variations. Let's say this is a couch. It's called a couch stretch for a reason. Okay, you can take your knee and you shove it right into the corner of the couch. Okay, again, this would be a little bit more stable, so bear with me. And bring this opposite leg out and bring your chest up. So right now I'm feeling a huge stretch to this back hip flexor all the way down into the knee a little bit. Okay. I have the ability to straighten up my leg and try to move my butt back towards my heel, and I'm going to get a tighter stretch. Or I can start to drop my hips down a little bit and open up on my right side. So from here, this is a great hip opener. It'll help release some knee tension and knee pain. If you don't have a couch, you can go find a wall. Let's just say this is my wall. I'll put the knee into the corner of the wall. Okay, find a pad or something. Put the knee into the corner of the wall. My opposite leg is going to come out, and I'm going to bring this back leg, and I'm going to rotate it around to behind the wall. So now I've got this foot behind me. It's trying. My goal is to get my butt all the way back towards my heel, and you can see my shoulders back. A lot of us might be in this position and be stuck. That's cool. Bring your hands down. Again, you can push your hips forward, or again, you can bring your body back, and you're going to get a huge stretch in this hip flexor, in the back hip flexor. But great for lower back, great for hips, great for your knees.
Nice. I like hip flexor is the movement of the day. I think that's great. Wait, hold on. So with the hip flexor, who would be someone that really like, what's someone doing, or who is someone that would definitely need to kind of be working or stretching the hip flexor? Profile.
Man, the older you get, the more you need to get in your hips, whether it's mobility or flexibility. The difference between flexibility and mobility is let's just say I have the ability to get into a position. Let's say my squat. I'm holding something. I have the flexibility to get into this position. My knees, my hips, my joints are allowing me to get in here. Mobility would be whether I can get in and out of this position and with control, right? So I think anybody at a sit-down desk job, or anybody with increased age, like, man, 30 and older, start tapping into the hips. I think the hips unlock so much potential for not only increasing your age, because the older you get, we know that sometimes if you break a hip or you fall, like, that's usually sometimes gained, unfortunately. And for us guys, we also hold a lot of testosterone in our glutes and our butt. So if we can get into that, lift legs, start to stretch out, increase range of motion within our hips, I think that's going to unlock a lot of potential for whether it's activity, movements, athletic movements, or playing with the kids, getting up and down, or just feeling better and taking tension off of your joints, your ligaments and tendons, like your knees and your hips. So unlock those hips. I think it's super important.
That's awesome. And can I ask too, if someone's not able to, I mean, I would say you moved pretty dynamically there. I know my hip flexors, especially when I was running a ton, like I've really removed myself from any kind of marathon training, because it's just not something that I was feeling like was benefiting me as much as just lifting and then doing more like what we call zone 2 stuff. Right. Just basically walking, right? It's been kind of good. I've been enjoying it so much more. But if someone can't move as dynamically as you just did, what's a way that you can still stretch that? I knew that there was always kind of like standing.
Hip flexors? Are you talking about hip flexors?
Yeah.
Well, I think a couple things. Not only if we have weak hip flexors, not only to stretch it out, I think it's important, but we need to strengthen those areas too, right? So I think there's a balance between those two parties. So I'll answer both questions for you real quick. One of my favorites to do is if I'm back on my elbows, if you've got a little bit stronger core, keep your legs like locked out straight, and we're moving our legs up and down and moving from our hips. Our legs are completely locked out. Whether I'm doing flutter kicks up and down, or if I point my toes and I do crisscrosses, all this stuff is going to work what I call your discount double check area, right? Like the lower abdominals and your higher hip flexors. But you'll feel your hip flexors screaming and burning. But I love this one because it's also phenomenal for your core. If it bugs your lower back, you can always put your hands underneath your butt like you're waving hello to somebody over there. keep your back flat, and then you can continue to do the same thing. You'll be able to get more repetitions in there, and that's going to really, really, really kind of tighten up, but strengthen, right? That's kind of what's ultimately what's going on. It's going to strengthen your hip flexors. But if you're unable to do a couch stretch, because yeah, you're right, that was a little bit aggressive, but I just pointed it out because I was right there. You can always get down on your knee and just bring one leg out in front of you. Okay, 90-degree position on both legs. Point that back toe. You're going to squeeze the butt, and simply you can press your hips forward. Okay, whether that means I'm bringing my hips down and allowing my chest to drop down, I can go my elbow to my toe, or I can rotate in here and get some sort of rotational twist. That's totally fine. But as long as I'm driving my hips forward, I should feel that back hip flexor. I'll switch sides so you guys can see a little bit better. So again, this hip flexor right here, I'm just pressing everything forward. You can see it's getting a stretch. Now my hips are going to want to rotate sometimes when they're not flexible. So let's just make sure that your hips stay super squared up and you're pressing everything forward. If you want an extra stretch, lean back and you'll feel a yuck, yuck, yuck. If you want just different range of motion leaning forward, again, you can kind of fall forward, elbow to the toe. Add any type of rotational twist down here, no problem. Again, really kind of where it's working, that discount double check area, hip flexors and hips. So
nice. I think that is, I think a great movement. I know that it always feels good when I'm releasing a little bit of tension from those areas. So that's good.
Guys, I don't know if you knew this, but guys, we hold our stress in our hips, in our butt. We hold a lot of our stress here. Women, they like to hold a lot of their stress up in the shoulders. And so that's why I say hips are so important. Like you said, you feel better automatically. Like if you feel stressed out, try to figure out a way to unlock those hips. So
I think one thing too, I was someone I really respect a lot. She always had a really good point of like playing, kind of using play in a lot of your strength training. And one thing in particular, she would always talk about was like sprinting. Like we don't do a lot of sprinting as we get older. So sprinting, making sure that we're doing that, I think is definitely helpful. But the other thing that she always said is like, we just don't jump anymore. So the more that we're actually able to just jump and be able to just kind of open things up, it can definitely feel good. I mean, you can see this in CrossFit a lot with people doing things just like burpees, or they're doing, other movements, other dynamic movements, but a lot of people aren't. So, however you can kind of move those areas opposite of kind of where you're sitting, I think is always a huge win. I think that's always great to hit on. So thanks for sharing that, man. And you know what it is, whenever I think someone is looking at, I always think about this for like online cooking classes and also looking at kind of movement online. A lot of times someone's like, well, you know what? I'm looking at it. I'm not able to do it right now. And it's like, you don't have to do it right now, but you use it as some motivation or just use it as some education to do later. Just let it kind of, simmer, let it sit, and then pull it back out when you think that you're able to actually use it. So, don't ever think that you just can't to get something out of a moment here. So I think it's always a good thing to bring up. All right. Any other thoughts right now? Because I have one more thought as I'm trying to kind of bring some interesting dynamics into this conversation and into kind of HealthDads in general. And, my next thing can be long, but I want to make sure I'm not dominating these ideas. Anything that you feel like would be good to kind of bring up or discuss right now?
No, I love this platform. I love this system. You just lead us. You are the storyteller. You direct us. I'll start to rabble along. You can pull me back on track, and we'll move and groove from there.
Here is my next one. Now, this can get spicy. I'm going to call this nutrition and training friendly counter arguments. Let me tell you one thing that blew my mind. So if no one knew my story, I had gone to a couple colleges. I was actually kicked out of my first college. Great story to bring up another day. I went there to play soccer, ended up not playing soccer, needed to make sure that I just kind of changed that scenario, which was, for all the better. One thing in particular that I had found a love for was, I think, biology, then went into marine science. And I went down to South Carolina from New Jersey, to coastal Carolina, and that's where I started to learn and study all things marine science. Now, obviously, I didn't stay within that, and I have my reasons for it. But one thing that I loved is the discussions that we would always have. And it was something where, there were so many counter arguments, either positive, negative, for, against,
Yeah.
whatever was going on. And it was never to really argue your point as much as it was to discover how other people kind of thought about it, or if there was a kind of a point that maybe we didn't understand. So these counter arguments, I think, are always great. One thing in particular was a conversation that we had that I know can not get so much political, but I know that it can actually get pretty damn emotional. And if we come back to the marine science thing for a second, I remember sitting in class and my professor bringing this thought up. He said, we're going to talk about whaling, right? We're going to talk about killing whales. And I want some of you to be for killing whales, and I want for some of you to be against killing whales. And so obviously the whole class in marine science is thinking like, well, we don't want whales killed. Why would we do that, right? And we're decimating the population and all this kind of stuff too. And so, I think the important thing as well is to keep in mind, where are we always staying emotional, and like where are we really staying objective? And so a lot of times, especially within this whaling conversation, you would get emotional reactions versus something that was more objective, like looking at numbers and looking at data and then understanding where the data is coming from. Do we trust that data, whatever is going on? But what we got down to was the fact that the amount of whaling that was actually happening across the globe was not really affecting the overall population of just whales generally. Now, there could be specific types of whales that that needed to be watched out for, but overall, it wasn't something that was decimating the whale population. And if people were being fed by it, then it was actually something that could end up being, could it be healthy in that case, what they're eating or whatnot. So it was always a very interesting topic. And at the end of the day, the numbers showed that like the whaling was not really as detrimental to the populations of whales that, that was a takeaway. And like, everyone's like, oh crap, like, okay, well, still, we don't want whaling, right? But if we want to tell people to not be whaling, well, we can't use the example that you're decimating the population. So how can we get someone to stop? Not with that data. Now we got to find other data, And so that's how you can become more intelligent, I think. And so it's that. So when we talk about, these counter arguments, friendly counter arguments to kind of learn from it, I think that nutrition and training is just that. And I know I've been really trying to stir up some trouble on X lately with just some questions about like, what is healthy? What does healthy mean? What is this? What is that? And at certain times I feel dirty, to be honest, when I keep doing it. But I think I
love it.
My overall belief and thought is that I think that we can spend a little bit more time thinking about what we're doing with nutrition, or where we're getting information from, or what we're listening to. And it's not like no one is, the majority of people that are online, like that are going to kind of start some discourse, no one's going to change. Well, the majority of people aren't going to change their mind, right? So I think the arguing is not as helpful as just making sure that you're bringing up some sort of thoughtful question or discussion. I know, what's his name? Jar Friends. Is that the guy that's been going back and forth with me? And I'm surprised he keeps going, because I just keep asking him questions. But one thing in particular we were talking about was fat, right? We were talking about different kind of fats, kind of healthy or what's not. And in particular, we were talking about things just like seed oils. I think if we were to take, those directions for a second and say, okay, like we've definitely heard seed oils, like they can be toxic, they can be bad, they can be all these things, we can use some kind of counter argument to learn more about this. And I think that could be definitely interesting. And if anyone else is listening and you have a topic that, we should discuss, and, I think what is also a really helpful thing is that we don't, I think when people kind of go back and forth and they're kind of arguing their point, it's easy to quickly like Google something and like find something and find a study and kind of throw this out there. But I think that the overall helpful thing is just where is our mind? Where are we thinking from some of these things too? But if we're not tired of it yet, I think we can definitely talk about seed oils. And I'm curious if we took this friendly counter argument part of our discussion here. Would you want to be for or against seed oils? What would you choose? Or hold on, don't do this. No, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to flip a coin. Do I
Can you
have one?
hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Is this a bad time to let you know that my family are actual whalers in Norway to this very day and have been for a couple hundred years?
Oh, nice.
True story.
Well, I mean,
So,
I
so that's why I was giggling while you're telling the story, and I'm kind of giggling. I was kind of waiting for it. And I was going to be like, speaking of counter arguments, like I can understand what you're saying because a lot of people do get very emotional on it, and in Norway specifically, it's extremely regulated. And my family's done it for a long, 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 long time, and they do it to survive.
Mhm.
And so there's, like you said, when you anyways, I don't want to get into that. I want to get into the stuff, but I just thought it was kind of funny. You're like, well, whaling, and I'm sitting here going, oh boy.
No, but that's but that's like another thing too. It's like when we bring these kind of things up, and we talk about it, I think sometimes we don't stay open enough to actually, know if someone has like a different, not just point of view, but like a lived experience with it as well, right? So,
Yeah,
like whaling, as we talk about it, as I talk about it sitting here in Brooklyn, you talk about it in Arizona, is going to be way different than talking about it on the coast of Alaska or in Norway. You know what I mean?
for sure,
So
100%, 100%.
it's like and I think that's just what brings up the best type of discourse. And so having those discussions, I think, is so important. And I think also leaving the door open to, know that we could either be wrong or how we look at certain things, I think is definitely great.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, I don't have a coin right now, but I do have I have a dragon. I have a cosmic
That is, ooh, cosmic.
uh, dragon pin, driven dragon pin. So I'm gonna flip this. I don't know if this is gonna work this way, but wait, should we do for or against on the side of the dragon?
I
I don't
think
know.
it's going to flip face down, so I don't know.
It might. Let's see. So you call it. You call it. You call
I'm
it
going face down.
face down. Okay, you got it. Okay.
So I guess that's tails.
So face up, right?
Okay.
Okay. So you get to choose. What do you? Oh wait, hold on. That's not what we did. We did four. I don't know what we just did, but anyway, you get to
I just
choose.
thought it was going to be heads down. How about I got it wrong? You choose.
Well, I thought it'd be interesting for me to be maybe anti seed oils for a second and see.
And you want me
How
to
that
you want me
go.
to play for the seed oils?
Yeah, for sure. I think that would be interesting. But here,
Well,
how about we set a time limit? Let's set a time limit for a good discussion. How about we
oh
do? How
boy.
many minutes would we need to have a good discussion about, or a good, thoughtful kind of thing about any topic? Maybe how about we do 6 minutes? If we do 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and then 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and then final thoughts on it.
That sounds good to me. I don't know if I can give you 2 minutes of positive things about oil. So here, let's start
Okay,
off with that.
2 minutes. Let's go. Two
Uh,
minutes pro or against seed oils.
2 minutes. I am for seed oils, huh? Well, seed oils have got to be good because they're from seeds and seeds are from the earth. So if God made it, it's got to be good for you.
All right. What do we have?
Oh, I gotta go more. You can't just. Oh man, this is okay. I thought we.
Yeah,
Okay.
you have 2 minutes, friend.
I saved up a minute 30 for my next round. No. All
Oh,
right.
I
So
guess
more seed oils. Okay. So seed oils, they're really fucking delicious. They're really good. Like all my favorite snacks that I like that my son eats with the crackers and the cheese fillings and stuff like that. I turn it around. It's got coconut oil, or excuse me, like corn oil or safflower flower oil, or I don't know what are the other oils out there because I forget some of them. But um yeah, all the stuff that tastes delicious. And whenever I go out to eat, like I assume that's anything fried tastes delicious. We know that. So um yeah, plus my parents told me things like that were really good for me when I was younger. Oils, like it's a good fat for you. You need to have fat in order for balance and to stay healthy. And um sometimes
Hold on time.
sometimes I would come in the house and it smelled really, really good. And so I like the smell of olive oil. Um, I'm not sure what canola oil is, but we use it on everything and it tastes delicious. It makes my food taste like 10 times yummier. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, that's a tough one. That's a
That was
really,
good.
really,
That was
that's more
good.
difficult than I could ever imagine.
Do you feel like you tapped into anything differently?
Do I think I tapped into anything differently?
Yeah. Any thoughts?
Um, no,
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 I
I
think
just,
this is interesting, obviously, because I know that Brian is anti seed oils. It's just he's not pro seed oils, and so I love it. I love that kind of side of
not
it.
all of them.
What's that?
I said not all of them.
Yeah. Also, so canola oil is rapeseed oil. So it comes from the
There you
rapeseed.
go.
So if
There
you
you
want
go.
to see what canola oil is, go check out what rape seeds look like. All right, so let's do 2 minutes for me right now on anti seed oils. Now I feel like I'm gonna come in at this from a point of view that there's a little bit of like research on, so that I definitely kind of know. But the thing is that seed oils are largely going to be a different kind of fat than some of the more beneficial fats that could be considered anti-inflammatory. So, you have omega-3s, you have omega-6s,
Yes.
and
Yes.
both, are very beneficial. But the bigger issue is that if we're eating a bunch of seed oils, well, those seed oils can definitely drive up the amount of omega-6 in our blood and our body. Now, the problem isn't so much of just eating the seed oil, it's just how much of it that we're going to have compared to actually omega-3. And so if we continue to eat seed oils, we continue to drive up and unbalance this ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. And really what has been believed, and I think I can say studied here, is that Americans at least 100 years ago would have something like an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of like 1 to 1, if not maybe like 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. And that was going to be considered more of an anti-inflammatory state. But considering that seed oils are more within our environment right now, we can find people that are above 20 to 1. And that becomes a big issue where now we can see inflammation, now that we can see, different markers of inflammation, because inflammation is not bad overall. But I think that when we have uncontrolled inflammation, it definitely is, as long as we can look at those blood markers. With 15 seconds left, what I'm going to say is, we have to watch out for where seed oils are coming in at. And most of the time it's going to be within our processed foods because they're going to be a lot more shelf stable. And that's going to help them make sure that they are going to be easily kept on shelves to be purchased. So that's my 2 minutes. I don't know if that was great, but that was it. That was it.
That was good.
We both talked different sides of it. But we have 2 minutes now. That was 4 minutes. We said 6 minutes. We got 2 more minutes. We can discuss. I don't know how to go about doing it. But tell me, thoughts on seed oils. Where are you at? You were just pro, but tell me, where are Brofit's thoughts on this? We'll do 2 minutes together.
Oh man. I'll tell you, it's just right off the top of my head, I feel like this is already a difficult thing to do, just because again I am against a lot of seed oils, but I noticed that all the foods, I'll try to stay with positive still. I'll still try to stay like, well, all the foods that I really, really like are up and down the aisles, right? Every aisle that I go up and down, I'll find a whole bunch of snacks and stuff that I really, really like to find. The things I don't really like necessarily are found around like the outside of the fruits because they taste bland or they don't have a lot of flavor in them. Yeah, I'll stick with that.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that a lot of things, when people kind of talk about how people are food shopping, how many times have we heard someone say, shop the perimeter and all that kind of stuff? And, you're going to find a lot less of the seed oils on the outside of the store because a lot of those foods aren't going to be processed either for good or bad. But I think the one thing that you're going to find most of the time is that seed oils are going to be used in those processed foods. And again, processed isn't either good nor bad. It's just the fact that, when you process things, you're going to have to either add something in to stabilize it, you're going to add something in for flavor, or add something in just to make it, be something that is going to have a certain nutrient profile to it. And so seed oils can be the most shelf stable. And so that's what they end up using. but the more processed foods that we're actually eating, the more that we're taking in. And that's really what drives up that omega-6. So I think, I know I have a hard time with people just kind of blatantly, people kind of canvassing the idea of seed oils and saying that all seed oils are bad, when really most of the issue comes in just eating more of the processed foods. And so when you take out the processed foods, you take out more of the seed oils, but you can definitely make sure, like if I were to take a shot of seed oil for 3 weeks, it's not going to be as much of an issue as it would if I was eating, chips and cookies and crackers that were just, filled with them. It's different. It's a different story as they're kind of combined with different foods. So it's my thought. It's kind of fun. It's a little bit hard, I think.
Yeah, that is very hard. I kind of go back to, well, here we are talking like anti-pro, and I know that my answer to this, but what would be your answer to replace some of those things? Whether it's the nutritional fact of replacing a fat, like what could I cook with instead of some of those oils that may not be super beneficial for me, or what are other ways that I can integrate flavors into my food that I might feel like I'm lacking by shopping around the perimeter of my aisles? What's going to keep me? I seem to, when I go eat a bag of chips, I get kind of full for a little bit of a time, but when I seem to eat really healthy, I get hungry again, and and it seems to be really expensive. So how do I do that? I'm still kind of playing that side, by the way. I know how I would answer this, but I'm trying to play the, how do you, I love seed oil. So how do I get away from that? What would you use as a substitute for cooking that would allow me to have more of that, I guess, nutritional profile, like you said, or to allow me to continue to add that flavor into my food?
Well, I mean, I think different flavor profiles are going to be different. So like, let's say that if we were going to make something like cookies, you're definitely not going to, cookies or a cake or something. Say you want to make it at home with like the most healthful ingredients, right? Whatever it's going to be. Keep losing my light over here. But if I'm going to put olive oil into the cake batter, it's going to taste one way. If I'm going to use ghee in it, well, it's going to taste a little bit different, but it's also going to be a different product once it ends up being baked and then cooled. So it's something here where we use those different oils, I think, to make sure that we are getting the product that we want, that's going to taste good, that is also going to, have a good palatability to it as well, as it kind of sits there. So I also think about this with like sesame seed oil. Sesame seed oil can be really delicious when it's used appropriately, whether it's going to be on rice or a certain dish, because it's just so pungent. And so, using some of these seed oils for the purposes that, of highlighting their flavor or the need, I think is going to be a great thing. When it comes to using a different oil, if I'm going to fry something, you can use olive oil to fry something if that's what you want to do. You can use canola oil to do it. You can also fry something if you want to, more pan fry it, say in butter or ghee or whatever you want to use. But I think that I think largely kind of where I would go with the whole fat thing, I think is just making sure that we are limiting the hyper palatable, hyper processed kind of foods, that you're just using those fats and you're really changing the overall structure of it. Because a lot of these fats and seed oils by themselves, say like on a salad, or, you having it as just part of a meal,
Not
just
a bad idea.
natural form, actually does have a lot of benefits. But again, when you start changing the structure of it by overheating it, that's when it's something that can end up being a little bit more challenging for the body. That's all.
You bring up a really good point, I think, and that's why I don't mind olive oil. It's one of the only oils that doesn't change consistency under heat. So that's why I personally like it for the cooking aspect of it. And you're right. If we have certain oils and we're taking a teaspoon of it, it's not going to be the worst case scenario if we're drizzling it on like a salad. I personally used to put coconut oil in my shakes, right? I'd do my protein, I'd do my carbohydrates with some berries and stuff like that, and then I'd literally just take a teaspoon of coconut oil and I'd pour it in there and I'd blend it up, so I'd have my protein, carbs, and fats. And again, it's not as harmful when, again, it's getting changed under heat and oxidized, and that imbalance again, like you mentioned before, of the omega-3s and 6s.
Yeah, and that's also when we can start getting into the whole trans fat conversation. So whether you believe or don't believe that things like saturated fat ends up being an issue, when you end up taking a lot of these fats, what you do is you're basically changing the structural component of what it is, and it's going to highly resemble something like a saturated fat, the different bonds that are going to be within them. And those bonds are really going to affect the walls of the artery a lot different. And so that's where you can have a lot of damage that can really build up. And so we want to make sure that what we don't do is that we start to take a lot of these oils and we overheat them. One thing in particular, when we look at different oils too, is that you have different smoke points, right? So when you have like an olive oil, you have a smoke point that's going to be a lot lower than, say, you're going to have something like a sesame oil or a canola oil. So when you are looking to maybe deep fry something, or you're going to look to actually you cook something at a higher heat, when you want to make sure that you do is you use an oil that's not going to break down as easily. That's why an olive oil is not going to be the best thing for, you know, some of that deep frying. Although I spent some time in Puglia on a vacation and they deep fried everything in olive oil. It was kind of amazing to watch it, even ask those questions. And they were like, yeah, we just use olive oil for everything. But really the bigger issue is the continual use of it when you're actually heating it. So things like peanut oil are used in a lot of places because it has a very high smoke point, and it's not going to be something that is, one, going to give off smoke, but it's also something that's not going to get to change the actual structure of it so that it ends up being unhealthy within our body. So, you know, there's, I think, again, I always just think, and, you know, I know we're focusing on nutrition. I always want to think about like, how can we have these discussions when it comes to training too? But what is it that we can always make sure that we do, just not to be so binary in our thinking? Because that's the thing. It's so hard, especially in these discussions, because they're so nuanced, right? It's like,
Right.
you know what, how, like, okay, we're talking seed oils. How are you looking to use your seed oil? How are you looking to consume that seed oil? Just the same thing with like, well, how are you looking to stretch your hip flexor when you're at, you know, 85 versus when you're, you know, 30? You're probably going to do it differently, and you could injure yourself doing it one way versus the other. So, you know, is it dangerous to stretch your hip flexor? Well, no, it just depends on how you do it. So it's like, you know, I just think that these mindful discussions can always be, I think, a good part of kind of coming in here. So if anyone has any, you know, topics to discuss this way, I'd love something out of left field. I'd love someone to kind of bring up the
I
most
would too.
random thing and then be like, okay,
That's,
what do I have in my mind? You know, and kind of bring them up.
I agree.
So.
I work the same way. That's why I always say, you go ahead and spitfire the questions and stuff like that, because honestly, that's how I deal with things when I'm working with my clients. Like, they walk in the door, cool, what's the issue? What's going on? How are you feeling today? How have you been eating throughout the week? How have you been recovering? What's your sleep like? Like, let's talk about some of these things, because it changes. We change. You've mentioned it before. We change constantly. So what my goals are right now might be completely different than what they were a month ago, 3 months ago, a year. And they should change, because we're going to change. What I'm capable of doing now, I might not have been capable of doing when I was 20, because I've learned stuff. Or what I'm able to do now, what I was able to do in my 20s, I'm not capable of doing now as I'm getting older and I'm having certain limitations, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like, yeah. But I feel like it is very important still to move, to find some of those answers and stop limiting yourself. You mentioned earlier how important jumping was. Like, oh my gosh, it's pivotal. All I know is that we went to a birthday party for a second grader, 7 or 8-year-old girl, and I was the only dad jumping up and down on the trampolines with the kids.
Yeah.
The only one. Now, all I know is when I left there, I felt really, really good and proud. That was like, shit, like I still got it. I can still kind of move around. I didn't hurt myself. Like, you know, was I doing backflips and stuff? No, but I was able to move. And
next goal, backflips. That's your movement tomorrow.
You know what? I learned how to do a backflip when I was 36 years old.
Nice.
True story. I haven't done it since that day, but it took me a few hours to learn how to do a backflip. I was surrounded by a few Olympians that knew what the heck they were doing, and we had foam pits and the whole 9 yards. I had a great coaching staff, and they took me through a progression, and within like an hour or two, I was doing backflips. So
that's awesome. Maybe that needs to be the next Daily Dads challenge. is learning a backflip so we can all do it together at the next VCon, whenever it might be.
No, but I do believe people should be inverted. We should be upside down. I feel like that is something that, or, oh man, I'll tell you what, if you haven't done this in a while, I encourage somebody to do this. Go find a mat, go find somewhere where it's like a cushioned ground, maybe like a nice grassy field or something. But and yourself, I want you to answer this too. When's the last time you've tumbled, like literally just tumbled in a circle? You rolled in a ball. When's the last time you've done that?
I feel like my mind goes to no, find it and then make sure you say it. But you know what? I would say, if anything, it was just probably more like a quick stretch and just kind of like just rocking back and forth. But that's not really it. That's not what you're talking about.
I'm talking a full on tuck into the ball. I'm going to do it right now just because we're talking about it. And you know what? I don't really remember the last time I did it. I know it's probably been within the last couple of years just because I have kids and we're doing this sometimes on like the bed or something like that. But you know, it's it's good to do stuff like this, just a challenge and to move. Is this going to help me become in better shape? No, but it might give me a standard for what my body's going through or where it's at, right? I do feel that we should have the ability to move and get up and down on the ground and have certain movement patterns just as natural beings. And we lose a lot of that because, again, we sit down and we create bad movement patterns. We stop stretching. We stop growing. We go to the gym and we lift weight, and we're tearing down muscle fibers and they get tighter and, you know, we get injured and pull a muscle and we neglect it for years. And we wonder, like, when we become 30, 40, 50, like, oh, damn, well, I can't do that anymore. And then we start having excuses like, well, I got bad knees from like college. And well, shit, bro, that was like 20 years ago. Like, you know, like you could have done something in the last 20 years to like maybe help figure some of that shit out. Right.
Right.
So my whole point is, and I don't want to get off track, is go out there and go do a roll, tuck and roll. Does it feel pretty? No, it doesn't feel pretty. Is it very strange? Yes. Do I feel awkward? Absolutely. But you know what? It's kind of like going around and skipping, you know? Are you going to feel stupid doing it? Yes. But are you going to feel like a kid also internally a little bit? Yeah.
You know what?
It's a fun thing.
I know that your daughter likes horses. My daughter likes horses too. And so she always pretends that she's riding a horse. So she's like, she hops around, she goes, yeah, yeah. And then she makes us do it with her. She goes, come on, hop on your horse with me, Dad. And so I feel like in my mind, I'm always like, no, I don't want to do that, right? And then like, I'm not really one to be like, oh, I feel like I'm going to look stupid and people are going to be really upset. They're going to think I'm dumb. So I always really try and take advantage of those moments because I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to do this next. It's always good. But one thing we're going to say is, you know, testing your body out. And I'm so big on like, how long does it take you to move a mile? How many push-ups can you do in a minute right now? Do you know even kind of like what you can bench press? Do you know what you can squat? Because if you don't know these things, I think that you don't really know where your health status is. And that once you do, you really are going to be in a position to really improve yourself, but also know kind of like where you fall in between different what's the word I'm looking for? Health markers for right now is what I'm going to say. So, you know, test those things out. Can you do a somersault as beautiful as Brian over here? I think he did an excellent job. But good. I like these little things, these little challenges. One thing I feel like is I'm asking you some stuff in training tomorrow on My Daily Dad. Blaze brought this up. We're gonna do some of these shots. We were talking about Dom. What was it? I think Dom's still active right now in our chat. But he mentioned some of these like it wasn't energy shots. Dom, you said something else. But then Dom is feeling sick right now. Kid brought home a little bit of a cold, and so he has that now. And the one thing that I was saying is that like a lot of these immunity shots, I think that's what Dom said, is
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like we don't really know if they really work. But one thing in particular that's been really interesting is that there's been a lot of study about these ginger shots and how these can actually be really helpful in preventing colds and also shortening colds. Just like zinc has been kind of found to kind of be that way. But, we're gonna try them tomorrow. We're gonna see how they
Love it.
taste, and we're gonna check them out. But these ginger shots, man, I think I've never made it a part of my lifestyle, but I might this season because I really don't. Yeah, Dom just said immunity shots. That's what he brought up. So we'll see. We'll see what they're about. But so we're doing tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. It can't hurt. You can always eat some ginger and throw a little turmeric on anything that you're cooking too. I throw turmeric on my my ground beef all the time. It's delicious.
It is. What's not used enough, I think, is cumin. Cumin's not used enough.
Cumin. Yeah.
We gotta make sure we're doing that.
Yeah. Oh, black pepper, ginger. Yeah.
All right. We are at 1 hour, 10 minutes. That was good. I feel like I always want to try and maybe keep it around like maybe 40 minutes at most. But I don't know, bantering back and forth about this is always a good time for me. So that's why it goes so quick. But
I love it. I enjoy it.
For now, any final thoughts from you?
No, guys, continue to plug in, continue to tap into our minds, find your tribe. That's the biggest thing. Find the person that you can stay accountable, whether that's like a local community of like an F45 or across the gym or whatever, like a small mom and pop shop that just has like a 30-minute boot camp style, whether it's hanging out with me in the mornings or getting a hold of a fitness trainer and setting a one-on-one session with them, whatever it is. Set a time, set a place, and have somebody involved with it. If you have somebody else holding you accountable, it's 10 times harder to just bail out and to use an excuse not to show up. And I think that's really the hardest thing is that, a third of the time it's going to be tough. A third of the time we're not going to think about it. And a third of the time it's going to go over smoothly if and only if we show up consistently and are able to go through some of those motions and some of those emotions with, again, being in a good position or just going through it or just being in a bad position. So yeah, that's my final thought. I don't know even if that made sense, but
it always makes sense, man. You're pushing community, you're pushing accountability. All those things are definitely necessary. Check out BroFits live every morning. I know it's at 9 a.m. Eastern. That's going to be 6 a.m. Pacific or Mountain Time. I get confused with which Mountain Time you're doing right now, but I know it's 3 hours difference from me, which I got wrong one day. So check out BroFit, get a little bit of confidence and some great ideas on how to move your body. I think that's going to be good. And then join us for Daily Dads tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern. And at the same time, if anyone is looking to just kind of up level a lot of their nutrition, we have a few options for anyone that wants to kind of get into understanding their overall nutrition. Over on my website, you can figure it out. You can check it out at foodisfuelnyc.com. Got a remote program right in there that comes with a one-on-one conversation with me once you kind of go through some of the things that I normally do one-on-one with my clients that need it. But if you don't, fast track your way to learning about your body and then hop on a call with me. Go check it out, foodisfuelnyc.com. And we'll be back tomorrow, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, 1:30 Eastern, 10:30 Mountain Time Pacific. But yeah, we'll see you then.
All right.
Good stuff.
Love you all. Take care.